The late afternoon sun sank over Manhattan, bathing the towering glass facade of St. Augustine Medical Center in a fiery glow. Mrs. Eleanor Carter gripped the armrest of her wheelchair as her granddaughter, Maya, pushed her through the sliding doors. At 72, Eleanor's silver hair framed a face etched with resilience, her navy coat fraying at the edges. Around her neck hung a diamond pendant, an heirloom that gleamed faintly, a quiet testament to a life of struggle and triumph. Today, though, her breaths came shallow and ragged, each one a battle against the sharp pain radiating from her chest. St. Augustine was a titan of modern medicine, its marble lobby and sterile corridors a hub for the nation's best doctors and wealthiest patients. People flew in from across the country, desperate for its cutting-edge treatments and willing to pay its exorbitant fees. Eleanor wasn't here by choice. For weeks, she'd ignored the tightness in her chest, chalking it up to age. But this morning she'd collapsed in her Harlem apartment, gasping as Maya dialed 911. The paramedics had urged her to come here, citing St. Augustine's renowned cardiology unit. The lobby buzzed with urgency. Nurses darted between stations, a janitor mopped a spill, and families whispered in corners, their faces tight with fear or hope. Eleanor clutched her chest, her dark eyes scanning the room as Maya wheeled her toward the triage desk. The antiseptic smell stung her nose, stirring memories she'd buried long ago. A young nurse with a clipboard glanced up from behind the desk. "Name and symptoms?" she asked, her tone brisk. "Eleanor Carter," Maya answered, her voice trembling slightly. "She's having chest pain, severe. It started this morning." The nurse typed quickly, then frowned at the screen. Before she could respond, a cold, cutting voice sliced through the noise. "We don't have room for non-emergent cases today." Eleanor and Maya turned to see a middle-aged woman in a tailored blazer, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Her name tag read, Martha Reynolds, hospital administrator. Her blue eyes glinted with disdain, and her lips curled into a thin, dismissive line. Eleanor coughed, wincing as pain flared through her ribs. "This is an emergency," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "I need a doctor." Martha smirked, barely glancing at the wheelchair or Eleanor's labored breathing. "You'll have to wait in the ER like everyone else," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We prioritize critical patients here, no exceptions." Maya's eyes flashed with anger. "She collapsed this morning. She can barely breathe. How is that not critical?" Martha folded her arms, unmoved. "I've seen worse. Our beds are full, and our doctors are booked. Maybe you should have gone to a clinic instead of wasting our time." The words landed like a slap. A few people in the lobby glanced over, a doctor scribbling on a chart, a family clutching a child's hand. Eleanor felt the familiar sting of dismissal, a shadow of the racism she'd fought her whole life. She straightened in her chair, her gaze locking onto Martha's. "I'm not leaving," she rasped, each word a defiance. "Check my file." Martha's smirk faltered for a split second before hardening. She snapped her fingers at a security guard, a hulking man in a black uniform near the elevators. "Escort them out. They're disrupting triage." The guard hesitated, his eyes flickering between Eleanor's frail form and Martha's icy command. A murmur rippled through the lobby. Some turned away, while others raised phones, screens glowing as they recorded. Eleanor gripped the wheelchair arms, her knuckles whitening. She reached into her coat pocket with trembling hands, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number. "Jonathan," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm at St. Augustine. They won't help me. Please, come quick." Martha let out a dry, mocking laugh. "Calling your son won't open a bed. Rules are rules." Eleanor lowered the phone, her eyes blazing through the pain. "You have no idea what you've just done," she said, her voice a low, steely promise. The lobby fell into a tense hush, the air thick with unspoken stakes. The guard stepped forward, his shadow looming over Eleanor, but he froze when she raised a hand, not in surrender, but with the quiet power of someone who'd faced worse and won. "I'm staying," she said, her breath hitching as another wave of pain gripped her. Maya knelt beside her, clutching her hand, tears brimming in her eyes. Grandma, we'll find another hospital. No, Eleanor cut in, her voice firm despite the strain. This is where I need to be. Martha's face twisted with irritation. This isn't a charity ward, she snapped. You're clogging up triage. Leave, or I'll have you removed. Eleanor didn't answer. She stared past Martha, out the windows, where the city skyline darkened against the dusk. A nurse nearby hesitated, her eyes darting between Eleanor's pale face and the monitor beeping behind the desk. The triage nurse spoke up, her voice shaky. Miss Reynolds, I could check her vitals. No, Martha barked, her eyes flashing. I've run this hospital for 10 years. I know who belongs here. She's not critical. The nurse shrank back, clutching her clipboard. The guard shifted, his hands hovering awkwardly at his sides. A man in a pinstripe suit, a lawyer perhaps, leaned toward his companion, a woman in a designer coat. She's probably faking it for attention, he muttered, loud enough to carry. The woman smirked, sipping her latte. Should have stayed in her neighborhood. Eleanor's lips tightened, but she said nothing. She'd heard it all before, whispers about her skin, her roots, her right to exist in spaces like this. She'd spent decades proving them wrong, and today, even as her heart faltered, she wouldn't yield. Minutes dragged on, each one a knife in her chest. Her breathing grew shallower, her hands clammy. Maya's voice rose, frantic. She's getting worse. Do something. A small crowd gathered, nurses, patients, visitors, watching the standoff unfold. Phones stayed up, capturing every word. Then the glass doors hissed open, and a tall man stormed in, his presence slicing through the tension like a scalpel. He wore a sharp black suit, his dark hair streaked with silver, and his green eyes blazed with fury. Nurses froze, a doctor dropped his tablet, and the janitor's mop clattered to the floor. But Martha, oblivious, marched toward him with her usual arrogance. "Sir, I'm sorry," she said, her voice syrupy with false regret. "We're at capacity. No walk-ins." The man stopped, his gaze locking onto Eleanor. She gave a weak nod, and he turned to Martha. "I'm not a walk-in," he said, his voice low and lethal. He pulled a sleek business card from his jacket and slammed it onto the desk. "I'm Jonathan Carter, CEO of St. Augustine Medical Center." A stunned silence swallowed the lobby. A coffee cup hit the floor, shattering. The man in the pinstripe suit choked, and his companion's latte splashed across her coat. Martha's face went white, her mouth gaping like a wound. Jonathan ignored her, turning to the triage nurse. "Pull my mother's file. Now." The nurse scrambled, her fingers flying over the keyboard. It's here, sir," she stammered, pointing to the screen. "Eleanor Carter, registered patient, cardiology referral from this morning. Flagged as urgent." Jonathan's jaw clenched. He didn't look at Martha, but his voice was a guillotine. "Miss Reynolds, you're fired. Hand over your badge and get out." Martha's eyes bulged, her composure collapsing. "Mr. Carter, I didn't know. She didn't look." She stopped, choking on her excuses. The guard stepped forward, and Martha flinched. With shaking hands, she unpinned her badge and dropped it, the metal clattering on the desk. She turned and fled, her heels echoing as she vanished through the doors. The lobby erupted. Nurses rushed to Eleanor, hooking her to a portable monitor as it beeped erratically. A doctor shouted for a stretcher. The man in the pinstripe suit slunk away, his companion trailing behind. Jonathan knelt beside his mother, his face tight with worry. "Hang on, Mom. We've got you." Eleanor managed a faint smile. "Took you long enough." But the drama wasn't over. As nurses wheeled Eleanor toward the cardiology wing, an older doctor in a white coat burst from an elevator, his stethoscope swinging wildly. His gray hair was a mess, and his eyes widened when he saw her. "Eleanor Carter?" he gasped, his voice trembling. "The Eleanor Carter?" Jonathan sighed, rubbing his temples. "Yes, Dr. Hayes, my mother." The doctor, Dr. Samuel Hayes, chief of cardiology, turned to the staff, his voice booming. "Do you know who this is? This is the woman who founded St. Augustine. She started it as a clinic in Harlem 40 years ago. Saved my life when I was a kid with a bad heart." A collective gasp swept the crowd. Nurses froze, a janitor dropped his broom, and the triage nurse stared, dumbstruck. Jonathan shook his head, a wry smile tugging at his lips. "Mom, I told you to stop testing us like this." Eleanor coughed, her eyes twinkling despite the pain. "I didn't plan this one, dear, just bad timing." The staff exploded into action, rushing her to a treatment room. Dr. Hayes clasped her hand, his voice thick. "You saved me once, Eleanor. Now it's my turn." Eleanor lay in a private room, an IV dripping into her arm as monitors beeped a steady rhythm. The chest pain had eased thanks to Dr. Hayes' swift intervention, a blocked artery caught just in time. Maya sat beside her, clutching her hand, while Jonathan stood by the window, gazing at the city lights. "You scared me," he said, his voice soft but stern. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Eleanor chuckled, weak but warm. "Didn't want to bother you. You're busy running my hospital." He shook his head, smiling. "You're impossible. Showing up in that old coat, no warning, nearly dying to prove a point. What if I hadn't been here?" "Then I'd have fought my way in," she said, her eyes fierce. "I built this place, fought racists, banks, and doctors who said a black woman couldn't save lives. One smug administrator wasn't going to stop me." Jonathan raised an imaginary glass. "To you, Mom, the heart of St. Augustine." She mimed a toast back. "And to you, for keeping it beating." The hospital buzzed with a new energy. Word of Eleanor's identity raced through the halls, and by the time a nurse brought tea, staff lingered outside, whispering about the legend who'd nearly slipped through their fingers. Martha's name became a cautionary tale, her career ending in a single, humiliating moment. Eleanor sipped her tea, gazing at the skyline. She unlocked her phone and typed a message for Maya to see. "Never let anyone tell you that you don't belong. You might just be the one who built the world they live in." She hit send, knowing it would echo beyond this room, through Maya, through the hospital, through every life she'd touched. The ripple of justice and survival that had swept through St. Augustine tonight would spread, a testament to a woman who refused to be erased. Eleanor leaned back, the tea warming her hands. "Tastes better with a heartbeat," she murmured, and Jonathan laughed. The monitors pulsed steadily, a song of life reclaimed, and the city lights shone on.